Go ahead and open up your instructions so that we can continue to work through our project today. And just as a reminder, let's reopen this video that we've been working on. The first thing I want to touch on, I know I talked about it last time, but relinking your files is a must. How many of you have opened a project yet and had it say that it's missing all the files? Has anyone experienced this? Several people have. So I want to show you exactly what you should double check to make sure that you're seeing everything as it is intended. Number one, open up your project folder right now so that you can see all of the files that you're using. Several people that I've talked to in the other classes or other sections were still struggling with having the right file open. So here's what you need to double check. At the end of every time you work in Premiere, you should come and look at your Premiere project file. Because when you've got that, you can look over to the right and see date modified. And this is why we learned these different views. Is if you look to where you can see on date modified, you can see when was this file last edited. And this file was last edited 8 minutes ago. AKA, this is the file that I'm working on. So I saw multiple people accidentally have like old save files or save as files or auto save files, and they were working from those, and those files were buried down in here. And when you look at them, is this the file that we were working on last class? Only if last class was September 30th. So you want to make sure that you're only dealing with one project file, and every time you make a change, you should be able to see that it was just saved right now or just saved 1 minute ago. So the other thing is, all of our footage, we have already organized into these folders. So you need to make sure that all of those folders are there and that they contain all of the content inside of it. So for example, this O5 audio sources has my music and my voiceovers in it. Okay, so yours should be the same. If you're carrying around or you're emailing yourself this file and you try to open it someplace and you don't have all these folders with the files, you're going to get an error message. Let me show you one more time how to relink. So with this project being the one that I'm working with, let me make sure it's closed here in Premiere. I'm going to save it and close it, and what do you notice? What changed about that file right then? Yep, as soon as I saved and closed it, now the date modified has been updated. But notice, this audio sources, when teaching this last class, I actually changed the name from O5 audio sources. I added a little X there at the beginning. So when this project was last opened, close it all out, close all projects. If I try to open this now, but I go back and I change the name of even one folder, Premiere is going to say, wait a minute, last time I was looking for these audio files, they were in something called XO5 audio sources. So it's going to say, I don't know where those are. When we open this up right now, it should have said that. Let's go see if they're still over here, actually. Audio sources. Okay, it relinked because it was that way once upon a time. All right, let me do it this way. I'm going to go and change this name now with it open. And Premiere should immediately say, I'm missing all those files because they're not in a folder with that same name. So what do you need to do? I turn on these two options. Relink automatically, relink others automatically. In other words, when I find even one of them, go ahead and look in that folder for the other missing files. But I turn off Use Media Browser. Here's why. If I turn that on and I hit Locate, it brings up the Adobe Media Browser. There's nothing wrong with this. It just, I'm used to working in the regular browser. So I actually turn that off. And then when I click Locate, it's just going to let me go in and find it. But it gives you a cheat sheet. Look at the top and it tells you, here's the last place I remember seeing these. So it was in a hard drive called 1 terabyte SSD, in a folder called 1450 Project 2 Premiere, folder called Project 2, folder called O5 Audio Sources, folder called Music Options, Dynamic Science. So if I come in here, I say, no, that now is in this XO5 Audio Sources, in Music Options, there's Dynamic Science. When I hit Open, it's going to relink those two and then look around in those folders for any of the other missing files. It found them and they're connected. Okay? If and when this happens to you, and I 100% guarantee it will, you will simply go to Google and type in relink files Premiere Pro. It happens so commonly that you have, it doesn't even take you to YouTube. It just brings up the video right there. Why does this happen so commonly? Because when you're working in a professional production facility, you might have whole hard drives out on the network or on other people's computers that store certain types of files. If you have licensed a bunch of stock music, that might all live in one location with all of the licenses. If you've licensed stock footage or images or anything else, that's going to live in specific places, not necessarily in a copy all on one hard drive, because you could be dealing with terabytes or petabytes of potential video clips you could draw from in a professional situation. So when you open up a project on a new computer, it's going to say, okay, the last time I used this stock music, it was on this hard drive over here. The last time I used these stock clips, they were over here. Or this news footage you shot is over here. And you have to tell it where those files are if they've moved. Do you understand the concept and what's happening there? Okay, not to belabor the point, but it's really important that you understand that. All right, now let's go ahead and roll forward with our project.
I have a question about that.
Yes, ma'am.
When I was loading mine up, it had all my files except the Adobe stock music.
Yeah.
Do we have to save that separately? Because I was only able to.
That's a great question. So if I were to go through here and open up this project and add, let me just go in and add audio. Here's how I would tell that. If I browsed in and I dropped in this clip into my track, your question is basically, where is this audio clip living, right? Yeah. So to find that out, you simply right-click on it and choose Reveal in Finder.
Okay.
So you can reveal it in the project. That'll just take you to your project window and show where it's at. But if you choose Reveal in Finder, it'll show you that it's in CC Libraries Downloads in the Project Files folder. So in the Project Files folder, wherever the project was saved, in other words, it made a folder called CC Libraries Downloads, and it put mine in there.
Okay.
So
when I was editing mine, that was the only thing that wasn't on there.
that was missing?
Yeah.
Yep. So
And it came up on other computers.
So it's possible, depending on the computer you used, it might have defaulted to saving those CC libraries someplace on the computer rather than on your hard drive. So it just depends on how the preferences were set. But that would be the file you want to make sure you take with you. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our editing workspace, Window, Workspaces, Editing, and move ahead with our project. Delete all these things and \out. Okay, so go to your Window, Workspaces, Editing. That way we're all going to be seeing the same screen. And if it looks any different from mine, go back there again and choose Reset to Saved Layout, or the Option Shift 0, and then we should all be looking at the same thing. Beautiful? Awesome. All right, let's practice a few of our shortcuts that we need to remember. So Shift 1, 2, 3, 4 all take us through our windows. Shift 1 takes us to our project window. Shift 2 to our source. Shift 3 to our timeline, and Shift 4 to our program. Go ahead and go through them. Shift 1, 2, 3, 4. Hit Shift 3 to go back to your timeline. And let's zoom in and out with which keys? Plus and minus, zoom us in and zoom us out. And today we're going to have to do a whole lot of making our tracks taller and smaller. So which keys zoom our tracks up and down? Shift plus and minus. So Shift plus and minus will make your tracks taller and smaller. We do have to have this program or the timeline selected for that to work, but that tells our shortcuts where to go. Okay, we're going to be resizing things a lot. You can also Command plus and minus will just make your video tracks taller and shorter. And Option plus and minus will do the same thing for your audio tracks. I don't really need my audio tracks very big right now. In fact, since I like where my audio tracks are, I'm going to go ahead and lock those. So if you'll click on the little lock to the left of these, that will prevent those audio tracks from accidentally getting edited. Several people in the last class accidentally deleted chunks of their audio, so they accidentally came in and chopped pieces off. It was a pretty simple fix. All they had to do was delete any pieces that were kind of in the way and then just retrim it back out. But if you don't want to accidentally edit your audio, simply lock any track that you don't want to accidentally edit. But it good okay here? All right, I'm going to shrink this and I'm going to resize this so I can see my video clips. All right, so let's jump into here. So we've cut our edits to the musical beats. We used footage of each university, and we scaled any footage down. So
Where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy.
and we could certainly use more footage of each college. So if you wanted to make this a little bit faster paced and have a little bit more action, more cuts, you can do that following the same process. But now we need to go through and add any other B-roll as well as logos, and then we're going to add text titles as well. So right off the bat, let's add some of these logos that I'm missing.
Welcome to
Rock the Vote. So right about there, we're here.
Rock the Vote.
Rock the Vote.
Welcome to Rock
Rock the Vote at Belmont University. So I'm going to pause it. I'm going to open up my graphic sources, look for my logos, and let's see if I can find Rock the Vote with Belmont. There it is. Get that loaded up. And then look at my screen. Let's review what these two blue bars do once you've got to Rock the Vote, because we're going to use these several times today for different purposes. So understanding their function is really helpful. What is this bar on the left side, this blue bar that we move up and down between the different video tracks? What does this do? Anything from the source monitor. So if it's from right here, anything from the source monitor that's going to get dropped down onto a track, this source patcher tells it where to go. So since I want to put Rock the Vote in here on this track, I put my source video 1 right there. Then I need to tell it where it should start and where it should stop. So I was listening to this and
Welcome to Rock
the Vote. Right as she says Rock the Vote, I'm going to hit my end point. So that'll be the place where it begins. Hit my down arrow until I'm kind of there at the out point. And I'm actually going to go left 1 space so that when I hit the out point, it's going to end right there at that clip. Right there at that cut. And now with Rock the Vote loaded up here, I can simply drop it down into that spot. The period key will overwrite my video clip down into my in and out points. Yes, ma'am. So you have to, it won't do it until you've got something loaded up here. So if you'll go and open up that Rock the Vote logo first, then you'll suddenly see it active. Beautiful, there. Yep, great. You all doing? Good. Cut it in. Excellent. Raise a hand if you need help. Everybody got that one in? Okay, I think for some of
Where
these others.
Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy. With performance from Tennessee State University, spoken word artist Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter Cove. From Fisk University, R&B singer-songwriter Warren.
Okay, it looks like I already got the rest of these in here.
Joy and Headlight
Renjoy and Moon Taxi. We're going to need to resize these in just a second.
Hospitality Properties and event partner Rock the Vote.
Okay, so I've got all of my pieces in here in general where they're supposed to be, but now we need to go through and make some adjustments. So real quick, let's go to each one and make the size adjustments and location adjustments. So let's go to Rock the Vote at Belmont University first and make some changes. So if you double click on it, it will load it back up into the source viewer. If you double click on the clip down in the timeline, it'll open it up in the source viewer, and we want to switch to our effect controls. So Shift 1, 2, 3, and 4 are our main windows. Shift 5 takes us to effect controls. In fact, there's several we'll use today. Shift 5 takes us to effect controls. Hit Shift 6. That will change us to our audio mixer. Shift 7 opens up which window? Effects in the lower left corner. Yep, you can see it's effects. That's what's underlined. And I can see my effects like my transitions and my video and audio effects, which we will use today as well. So if you just remember Shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll always be able to find the main windows that you need. Okay, so Shift 5 takes us to our effect controls. So with this clip selected, you see you should have little toggle down arrows for motion, opacity, and time remapping. Close them all up and then toggle open the motion tab. Got it? Okay, with motion tab, you can also look right up here because right above all that, it tells you which clip you're affecting. This can be confusing if you have the wrong thing open, if you think that you're adjusting one clip, but you're actually adjusting a different one. So looking right up here, which clip am I affecting? Rock the Vote logo.tiff. That's this one down here. Awesome. So to make changes to it now, you can click anywhere on either motion, position, or scale to get these little bounding boxes. Do you see those little handles on your video clip that you could then click and drag to adjust? Okay, if you have position or scale or even just motion selected and highlighted, then you'll get those little bounding boxes. Yes, ma'am. Okay, just have to have the clip selected and then you'll see.
Yeah, I don't see them.
Okay, then you don't have motion, position, or scale selected. Click on word, there you go, and then you'll see it. Your timeline is not over the clip, so you can't see it. There you go. Good. All right, now pause with me because there's several ways that you can manipulate stuff in this effect controls window, and it's important that you know all three because you will use all three regularly. So let's go through them real quick. First off, if I'm trying to edit the Rock the Vote clip, I need to have my timeline sitting over the top of it so I can see what I'm doing to it. So I need to make sure my timeline is actually over the clip I'm trying to work on. Second, I have to select said clip for it to show up here in the effect window, or effect controls window. Third, you've got multiple ways to adjust it. Don't mess with these keyframes. These keyframes here, if you click on them, you'll see they say toggle animation. If you turn it on and you go, oops, I didn't mean to do that, and you turn it off, it'll give you this scary warning. This action will delete existing keyframes. That's okay because I didn't mean to make them. You just need to click on the name itself to select the position or scale. Next, and this is important, most of the time, let's say that you open this up and when you dropped on Rock the Vote, it was way too big. So you can't see anything, okay? So I select the clip, it loads up in here. Most of the time, I just want to quickly bring the scale way down so I can actually see it on my screen. Well, you see with these numbers, when you hover over them, you've got two options for editing. One, this little double arrow. And if you click and hold down and drag left and right, it lets you adjust that. Or if you simply click on it, it puts it into a number mode and you could type. So a lot of times the quickest thing is to simply type in 50 and hit return or something, and that'll shrink it way down. Go ahead and try both of those. Click and drag on those numbers to make their adjustments, and then click on the number to highlight it, and then type in a specific number and hit enter. You'll use all of these methods, so you do want to just be able to adjust that. Now, what about when you want to make really small adjustments? Just click on it so that the text is selected, and then on your keyboard, use the up and down arrow keys. Up and down arrow keys will allow you to move things nice and small in really little increments. And if you hold the command key down, it will move in 0.1 increments. So up and down arrows, add the command key, and it moves in smaller increments. If you add the shift key, it goes in bigger chunks. So shift up and down arrow moves in bigger chunks. Got it? And then just hit return to accept it. All right, how's that? So let's go through. I'm going to give everybody a minute or two. Let's go through, select your clips, scale them down, and if you want to move them, for example, to the left or right-hand side of the screen, you can simply select the word. You'll see the bounding boxes appear around, and you can just click anywhere on the picture and drag it. Word of warning, this little target in the middle of the picture, do you see that? Is not what you think it is. You don't want to grab that and drag it because you'll notice it doesn't actually move the picture. That's what we call the anchor point. And the reason it exists is, for example, right now, if I were to rotate this picture, if you grab the rotation number and did that, you can see that it rotates around what? Rotates around that anchor point, right. If I moved that anchor point someplace else and I started rotating, you see it rotates around the anchor point. A lot of times people who are new to editing this think that that's the part you grab to move it. Nope, you can just click and drag anywhere on the picture. So now let's go to each one, select it, select your position and scale, scale it down as needed, and move it someplace comfy. All right, raise a hand if you need help. Otherwise, go through and quickly adjust your images. Raise a hand if you need help.
Is there a way to like auto center, auto like right click and like that?
There is with text. If you're talking about like auto locating these, when you drag them around, you should get snap guides. So you should see it kind of like snapping this arrangement right here on mine.
Or it's not happening? I couldn't do it.
No, it's probably just a setting that's turned off for you. And I'd have to remember where that's at. Maybe it's in the preferences. Timeline, graphic media, playback. Go ahead and everybody get those done. Get all of these arranged in place, scaled down to fit. So we can move on to the next thing. You're saying you're not seeing magnetic. Let me turn this off and see if that makes a difference. Let me just Google it. Premiere snapping in program monitor. View snap in program monitor. Here's where it is. View snap in program monitor. If you turn that on, then you'll get snapping around. That work now?
I think so. Right now.
So select the clip. And now you can either click on position or scale. And now you can move it around. There you go. Good. Turn the group in. There you go. And over here. Go. That's it. Okay, let me show you. All right. Look at my screen real quick. One other adjustment. I think on this Vanderbilt shot. I think this is the right one. Let me reveal this in my Finder. Oh. So this is Vanderbilt drone 4K. Okay, so that would be if you had, okay, so I've got the wrong, not the wrong one, but I've just got a different one in here. Let me just show you this real quick. Patch this source in and come over. If you chose this clip, stock audio, stock footage. So here is a Vanderbilt shot that I had in here. Let me set my endpoint and override it down there. All right, so what Maddie just pointed out was I had stuck a Vanderbilt drone 4K shot in here, and you'll notice when we load it up into the program monitor, it looks like this. But when we load it down into our track, it looks like this. What's going on? Super zoomed in. Why is that? Well, if we look at this clip, let's actually come over and see it. Here it is right here. If I toggle it open, you can see like video info right here, and it tells us all these other clips are how big. What resolution is that? 1280 by 720, what they call 720p. That was the first kind of high definition video that we had. So 1280 pixels wide by 720 tall. This one Vanderbilt clip is how wide by how tall? 3840 by 2160. So AKA, it's huge. And as a result, when you drop it into a timeline that's much smaller, it looks really gigantic. So Maddie, there's a couple things we can do. You could either load it up. When you double click it here, you notice it loads it up as 4K. You could either come into effect controls and scale it down. So that's one quick solution. And that's one of the reasons that people shoot in 4K now, is because you can actually reframe which part you stay focused on after the fact. Or Maddie, even better, if you simply right click on a clip that's a different size than your sequence, you'll see an option to scale to frame size. And that will automatically scale the whole thing down to fit the frame size. Thank you for bringing that up, Maddie. All right, for the rest of us, we've got our clips in place and things are looking pretty good. All right, so now we've been able to adjust our timing. Now, let's zoom out because I notice another problem with this video. All of the universities are playing back their footage, but which university is that? Maybe. I mean, it is, we know because we have the clip, but when we're talking about somebody watching this, all these universities were participating, and what we notice is it's not really clear to anyone that doesn't know these universities what they are. Like, you know, I don't know which building that belongs to or which university. Except for one of these universities, the footage they sent had a nice little marker. Do you see it? Okay, so in this case, Middle Tennessee State University pops up down there. Now, whenever you're editing a project that involves multiple companies, you've got to be very thoughtful and sensitive about how you represent their brand. So in this case, this is the only piece of footage that had the logo burned right into the footage, so we couldn't remove it. So we either add a logo to everyone else or somehow remove it from here. Removing is not an option, so we need to go in and add these logos to the rest. Now, what we need to do is put the logos above each clip and resize it down into the corner, just like this Middle Tennessee State. So here's what we're going to do. Take all those B-roll clips you just added and select them. So backslash key will zoom you out so that you can, the backslash right under delete key will zoom you out so you can see. Shift plus and minus will resize your tracks so that you can see them all easily. And select all of those clips, leaving our A-roll alone. I don't want my A-roll, just my B-roll. And then I'm going to move those up one track. Option and the up arrow on your keyboard. Option and the up arrow will move all selected clips up or down a track. So option up moves them up, option down moves them down. Go ahead and do that once or twice, just so you kind of get that. You'll use it all the time. Just needing to move whole selections up and down tracks. Now, let's go back to that first clip with Belmont and let me walk you through the process for quickly adding the logos. All right, here is a perfect example. We know what this source does, don't we? This source selector. This source selector determines if you've got a clip up here in the source monitor. Let's go ahead and go find the logos. And I'm going to load the Belmont logo up there into the source monitor. Throw me a thumbs up when you've got the Belmont logo up in the source monitor. Leah, Dale, you guys okay? Okay? All right. So with that up here, here's my process for quickly doing this. You can, of course, if you want to be slow about it, you could grab this clip and drag and drop it down onto this track. You'd have to scroll around some. Don't do it this way. I'm just showing you that you can if somehow you got completely lost. And you could trim this back out. Oh, I've turned off my snapping. Snapping turned on. And so then you could trim it until it was in place. What if this clip was way longer? Like if this was a really long clip, like, I don't know, 20 minutes long or something? Well, here it's 12 hours long. If I were to drag this in, it would just overwrite everything else to the right-hand side. So if I had any other clips on there, they just got eliminated. That's why we don't do it that way, because that would hurt us. Instead, what we want to do is I want to mark the in and the out points of exactly where this Belmont clip is. So watch the beauty of this. If we just have our playhead over a clip, whichever track is targeted, that's the blue on the right-hand side, the X key will set your in and your out points right around that clip. Option X removes in and out points. X sets in and out points. Here's why this target thing matters. If I put my mouse right here, it's over 2 clips. If I hit X, it's selected around this clip, right? If I had this track targeted, X targets around that clip. Do you see the value of this target button? So if I was trying to do something just over this one, the target selects around that. If I want it on this one, it's selecting my inputs around this. So with my targeting correct, I can do this logo thing very fast. Watch. I select this clip. My source is going to drop it right here into V1, but my target is getting its in and out points from this clip. So I can literally X to select it. I've got the logo loaded. The period key overwrites into that section. I'm in the Vanderbilt drone piece. What marks it? What key marks the section? X. I load up my Vanderbilt logo. And how do I drop it down with an overwrite? Period. Now it says, hey, this is a still image, so it doesn't really have an amount of time. It can last as long as you want. So you have to change it or fit it to fill. And then the Vanderbilt logo's on there. Now they're way too big. We're going to have to resize them, but you already know how to do that. So once you go through and do this, I'm going to mark this Tennessee State one, load up the TSU logo, period, to overwrite. MTSU's already got its logo. Fisk needs one. Load up the Fisk logo. Mark the Fisk clip, period, to fit to fill. Vanderbilt. Mark it with X. Load it in the clips, period, fit to fill, etc. And this last Belmont one, I can load up, drop in, and then I think the rest of the clips are Belmont. So I can just stretch that one over the entire rest of it. And now I can go through and use the exact same controls under Effect Controls to resize. Bring my scale down, put it down in the corner. And I want to make them all nice and small. I'm going to turn off in my view, snap to program monitor. There we go. Yes, ma'am. Yep, there is. We'll look at that very thing. All right. And once you've done that, scroll through and make sure that all of your footage has a nice little logo down at the bottom. Okay, so just a quick iteration. We're talking about titling. So I deselected all my clips. I switched to my text tool, and then I clicked and I dragged out a box on the screen where I could type in her name, Summer Jade. You'll notice that also gives you a little clip down here. I'm going to blow that up with Command plus a little bit and trim this out over her entire video clip. So zoom in with plus and minus and just trim that out over her clip. Now, what if I wanted to make this a little more interesting? Right now, it's just white text over a kind of washed out video, and it doesn't appear with any sort of particularly interesting visual. But if I want to change, let's say I want to change the color. I'm going to, with my text tool selected, just come in here and select the words that I want to change color. And I have effect controls for both the motion of the individual clips and the text itself. And when you click on each one, notice you get different results in the timeline. If you click on vector motion, now it lets you move this whole title like a video clip. It lets you scale it up and down, adjust the motion of the whole clip. If I select the text over here, you'll notice it gives me the text box, where I can select my text and change my font, for example. I'm going to change this to Montserrat, M-O Montserrat regular maybe. I can adjust the size. Now do take note of this. Look at the size here. For whatever reason, I do not understand this. Premiere, once I've selected the text, the far left end of this font adjustment is at 100. So it's like you can adjust that, but why somebody would need like, what is this, 1600 point font on a, like, I don't know what size of video you might be making, but 1600 point font is gigantic. So I usually will just click on that and use my up and down arrows to resize it. You can obviously use these other adjustments to make it center aligned, left or right justified. This right here, what they call the tracking, will bring your letters closer together or farther apart. These, if you make them farther apart, these will make them closer or farther together by line. So go through and just take a second and click around with some of these different preferences. We're going to delete this one, so just go ahead and click through so that you kind of get comfortable with what these do.
How do you like redraw?
Yes, you have to. So what happens is you have to make sure that you have the text tool selected, because sometimes depending on what you click on, it'll switch you back to the selection tool. So, and the selection tool lets you move that little chunk of text around. So, but if you want to be in the text, to be able to actually select the text and manipulate it. So that's why I say you'll switch back and forth between the selection tool, and the type tool, depending on what you want to do. Does that make sense? Did that help?
Is there also a way to like expand, like make your text box bigger after?
Yes. Great question, Chandler. Look at my screen, because this does drive me crazy. You look around when you're sitting here trying to edit the text, and it's like, well, maybe I didn't draw my box perfectly, and there's no obvious way to change it. Turns out you have to switch back to the selection tool, and then you can manipulate the box. That do it for you? Sweet. All right, last thing, let's change the text color on this. So I have to switch back to my text tool with the T key. I'm going to select all of her text. And here we have our appearance, shadow, stroke, background, etc. And let's say I wanted to make her text maybe some color from her shirt. Look at my screen. And just watch me do this and then take a minute to play with it yourself. You can do it one of two ways. If I have a really obvious place to click, I can just come straight to the little eyedropper, click on the eyedropper, and then click on the color. That does a good job, and you can see that it changed this fill color right here. If you click on this fill color box that has the green in it, you do have to make sure the text is selected. If I open that up, I could come through and make some adjustments in there. But the most important thing with text like this is that the contrast, it sufficiently contrasts with the background. And right now, that doesn't contrast very well. You can add other things like a shadow. So I can come in and add a shadow. You can add a stroke. A stroke will add a thin line around the text. And you can actually come in here and increase or decrease the size of the stroke. But since no text is selected, it's not being affected. So if I select this and I add a little bit of a stroke, then you'll see that I can get a nice line selected around it. Maybe I'll make that stroke white. Okay, now it's standing out a little bit better. And then I can also add a background by turning that on, which will help it stand out as well. Okay, go play with each of those. Just make sure you have your text selected. And then I want to show you one other thing that people accidentally do wrong, and it drives them crazy. Okay, so you've got the text selected. So fill is the letter, the letters themselves. So you want those to be right now it's going to be so you want to change it to let's make it here. Okay, fine. Okay. Okay, so what keeps happening? That was the thing I was about to show. All right, look right here because Camden is doing a perfect job demonstrating the thing that drives people crazy. So, and that is this. Look at my screen because you got to know you're going to do this on accident. I just did it a second ago. It shows you how many layers of text you have here. If I'm sitting here editing this text and I have the text tool selected and I click anywhere else, it makes another text layer. So if I click someplace else, another text layer, especially if I draw boxes in. They just keep accumulating. So that's one of the things that drives me a little crazy about the way it does this. So I all the time find myself accidentally deleting or just going in and deleting the text. So for yours with the color, I'll have to come back and look at it. But just make sure that you have the text selected that you want to edit it. I'm going to change my fill. I'll probably use this to choose a nice color from her clip. And then that kind of relates the text to her. And I might maybe change my background to that dark green. Try that again. Background, dark green. And then a lot of times I'll just switch back to my selection tool, my V key, when I'm done. Nice. All right, is that working for you? Is everybody able to start navigating around? It takes a little playing around with the title tool to get used to it. All right, here's how we're gonna do it though. I wanted you to see all that so that you could know how to manipulate some of these different things. There's more and more things you can play with, all kinds of fun. Go ahead and delete that clip that you just made. And instead, under the window menu, open up the Essential Graphics panel. Okay, got the Essential Graphics panel open. All right, so in the Essential Graphics panel, you'll have two things. Either edit, if we're editing something, or browse, similar to the Essential Sound panel. You'll also have My Templates. These are free templates that they give you for titles and graphics, etc. And Adobe Stock with either free or premium. So you can check those and get all kinds of crazy titles and things that you can just fill in your own information. I'm going to stick with My Templates for right now and scroll through here and see if you can find one that you like. So you can use basic default titles. I found one earlier that I thought was kind of cool. I'm just going to scroll through and see if I can find that again. I liked, some of these are okay. That's kind of interesting. But whenever you find one that you like, there's so many. I'm trying to remember what it was called. There it is. I like this one called Like. Then you can simply drag and drop it onto an empty space above your track and trim it down to fit. Go ahead and go through and find one, or use mine, use the one that I've got in here called Like, and drag it in place. Then select it, and let's look at the options for adjusting it. Throw me a thumbs up when you're there. Sweet. All right. So there's a couple different places you will adjust and work with titles in Premiere. So first, I have it selected, and if we've used something from the Essential Graphics panel, there's a few little things you can do. They'll have default when you just kind of select them once. You've got individual layers here, And when you click on them, you'll see that you can also turn those different layers on and off, their visibility. So you really want to be thoughtful about which thing you've clicked on in order to make more changes to it. Or you can click in the empty space to deselect them all and just make sure that you have the clip itself selected. If you have your selection tool with the V key, then you can click on it, place it where you like, double click on it, or double click on this text layer with like, and I'm going to put in her name, Summer Jade. Now I'm going to go ahead and customize her color. So I'll select all of her text. I think I'm going to make the text white and make this shadow the dark green from her shirt. And hit OK. That's kind of cool. I could also add a stroke to it, and maybe I'll make that stroke the dark green from her shirt. Oh, have to make sure the text is selected. Drives me crazy every time. Nice. Take just a second, make those adjustments. Raise your hand if you need help. So, okay, so you got your text selected. It's filled with white. Your shadow, it already looks, it's there. Deselect. It's there, it's just really clear. So, select that. Shadow. Okay. Should sit. Good.
I can't pick a color that complements it. Like, I feel like every color I've tried is just really bad.
What do you mean?
Like, I
This looks so good.
Okay. Why is this great?
What you've got right here. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a crazy color. The other thing you can do is when you pull different ones in, then looking for something that just contrasts with. So here's a quick approach to that. So look at my screen real quick and let me show you one more thing with colors. Let's say I was trying to make this. We've got a whole lot of greens. So if you've ever looked at something like a color wheel, if you Google that, then you can open up something like this and you could see, okay, what's the opposite of green, or what will contrast well with green? Well, yeah, so here you can see, so you'll get kind of like this darker kind of red or purple, so something like that. But that would all obviously not necessarily work with this image. So we can make adjustments, but one thing that I like to do, if I did want this to be like related to the green from her shirt, I'd select the text, I would change the fill to match the green from her shirt. I'd hit OK. Then I'm definitely going to need some sort of stroke or something to prevent it from blending in with this green background. But also, if I select all this, if I open that color back up, here's a quick tip for how to make colors that stay in the right hue, but they contrast. And that is when you look at these HSB, RGB, all these things are different ways of saying the same color. So this particular green is 168 hue, 74% saturation, 23% brightness. It's also known as red 15, green 58, blue 50. So if you go into Photoshop or any other application where you can type in you need a specific color, these values are different ways of doing it. If you're on the web and you're trying to get this exact green, the code is OF3A32. So any of these values will get you back to that green. But if you come to something like this brightness or luminance, in this case this is hue, saturation, and luminance, hue being the color, saturation being how intense that color is, remember Photoshop, and lightness or luminance. If I grab that luminance and I just adjust it, it'll stay the same hue and saturation, but it'll just change the lightness. And look at this weird kind of path it follows. But so if I really wanted that to stand out, I could just change this lightness, hit OK. Maintains the correct hue, but now you can adjust the contrast. So that's kind of cool. I would probably go in and adjust her stroke. You change that stroke and make it nice and white so that there's really some contrast. Okay, kind of cool. So lots of things we could do here. But what do we need to do now? If I like that one, I want to reuse it on these other clips. Quickest way to do it, hold your Option key down and drag a clip. When you Option drag, it copies a clip. And so now we can go through and very easily change this next one, Shelter Cove. Option drag to the next one, Lauren McClinton. Go ahead and do that. And look at how easy that is. That's why we spend the time to get the first one right, because then we can, this is mellow. Yes, ma'am.
Like it starts out really like the normal size.
Yeah.
And it like zooms in really big.
Okay, so that's all those keyframes that we haven't quite got to yet. Something you need to keep an eye on. When you're adjusting this stuff, which motion should I manipulate? So watch this one. Here's the Melodors. This is a little tricky and it can be confusing. So I'm going to trim this one over. It still says Lauren McClinton. Everyone's going to need to see this because you will absolutely run into this problem. But now I need to move Lauren McClinton down here. There's literally like a dozen ways that you can move it, but they'll have different advantages and disadvantages. If I want to move Lauren McClinton down here beneath and replace it with the Melodors, let me just go ahead and change the Melodors. Okay, how should I move it over? Well, if I grab this video motion and I move it, it treats any text or anything in that whole clip and it has now moved it. So if there was clip text that I had added over here on the side, it just got put off the side of the screen, didn't it? Let me undo. Okay, if I grab this vector motion and move it, it's going to be similar because it's for all the vectors within there. If I grab the text itself, I can also use these buttons to vertically align it, center align it, top align it, bottom align it. So there's a bunch of different ways. The short answer is I would say if you just want to move this one piece of text, switch back to your V key. So that's your selection tool. Then when you click on it, you can just move that. That'll avoid most of those weird animation issues that you run into.
So is there something that I need to like delete but don't do that again?
Yes, I'll come and look at it here in just a second. So go through and make that happen. And then we've got one more thing we've got to do on these. Go ahead and get the rest of these titles laid into your clip. And you might just need to use a different one. Let's see. Switch to text. Annie DeRusso. And here I need to add 2 of them. By option dragging, so that one of them can be Bryn Joy, and one of them can be Moon Taxi. Then with my selection key, I can put them both where I want. Go through and finish adding any logos. That one may just be this one may just be yeah, I think. I probably just trash those and grab them back and put them on. See how we just grab and touch it?
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
So the Melodors already have their name in the
If you use that one, I probably would use a different one of theirs so that you could have the same title used across them all. You wouldn't want the word Melodors on there twice.
Bren Joy and Headliners Moon Taxi. With a special
All right. How's that working? Yes, ma'am. It's little. That's part of the animation. Hit play and watch it. Yeah. Little graphic. You can build these in After Effects and then import them as. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's there. It's probably not specific. All right.
Wait, sorry.
Yep.
You said option click.
Option click and drag.
Yeah, but now it's just completely moving it instead of just off. I guess I could just drop it.
No, hold the option key down. And click and drag. There you go. Oh, you're letting go of the option key before you're letting go of the mouse. Yep. Let go of the mouse. There you go. Yeah, that works in every video and audio editing app. Option dragging is a quick way to copy. All right, pop back to me. Let's go ahead and blow this clip up. So come to your timeline, hit the back or the tilde key so it blows up nice and big, and the backslash key to zoom out. Because now we've got one more problem that we need to work with. So everybody, backslash to zoom out, and the tilde key to toggle it up so you can see your whole set of clips. Here's the problem. When I look at this, when they pop up on the screen, all of a sudden there's all the clutter of the university shot in the background
University spoken word artist Summer Jade.
is kind of distracting, isn't it? So what do we do with it in the project itself? Well, in the sample video,
Colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy. With performers from Tennessee State University, spoken word artist Summer
what happens?
Jade. From
Yeah, it
Middleton.
blurs out. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to select everything above the logos. So we want the logos and the A roll to be not selected. And then let's move everything else up one layer. So option up arrow will move all of those up to a higher track. Throw me a thumb when you got it. Okay, so we just selected all of our B-roll clips and we move them up one layer. Now come over to your project window. Shift 1 will bring you to your project window. And down in the lower right-hand corner of your project window is a little box, looks like a sheet of paper that's with a bent corner that says New Item. Click on New Item and look for the words Adjustment Layer. So in the project window, so Shift 1 to the project window, the lower right-hand corner, there's a trash can and a new item. Click on the new item and choose Adjustment Layer. Got it? All right, what you see here is it creates an adjustment layer with the resolution and time base, so 720p and 24 frames a second. Go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see it drop this file called adjustment layer into your project. I'm going to go ahead and rename that blur layer, just so I can separate it out mentally. once you've got that, take that blur layer and we're going to drag and drop it into this empty track above our logos. So I can simply drag and drop, and then wherever it landed, it's going to be just a short little clip. Go ahead and just stretch it out so it occupies the entire space of the video. So here's what that looks like. I've stuck that blur layer above the logos and the A-roll, but beneath all of the cutaways and the B-roll. How many of y'all are getting a little bit better at Premiere? Starting to be able to navigate around? Okay, you're getting there.
Can you show the blur again?
So I just went down to the project window. Down in the lower right-hand corner of it, I clicked on the new item and chose adjustment layer. And then it made a new adjustment layer in my project. And then I simply renamed it to blur layer before dragging and dropping it in my timeline between all of my A-roll and my logos. Got it? Does everybody have an adjustment layer in there? All right. Now, we need to add a video effect, a Gaussian blur, onto this layer. Similar to how when you take a picture on Insta or Snapchat or whatever, and then you apply a filter to it, an adjustment layer is like an invisible pane of glass that goes over every frame of our video, and any filters or effects we throw onto it, now that's what we will see the video through. So we need to go to our effects. Shift 7 takes us to our effects. It's also, of course, under the window menu, effects, but we can see the shortcut right beside it is Shift 7. So we like to memorize that. We use it a lot. And in our effects, we can do one of a couple things. We can toggle open video effects and go looking through all of these possible effects that we can add on. You can totally do that for your own video. Or I can simply click in this search box and I'm going to look for a blur, but I'm going to look for a specific type, a Gaussian, G-A-U-S, and I'll see Gaussian blur pop up towards the bottom of the list. All we need to do is drag and drop that effect onto our blur layer to apply the effect. Now, do you see any difference? No, because we have to actually tell it how much we want it to blur, similar to what we did in Photoshop. So click on your blur layer, which should load it up here into our effect controls. When it's selected, it loads it up in the effect controls. You can look at the top of your effect controls box, look right here, and make sure I'm looking at my blur layer, because down at the bottom, it will have created this Gaussian blur. You have Gaussian blur there? Great. Go ahead and grab the blurriness knob, or the 00 here next to blurriness, and just turn it up. Let's go ahead and blur this out. Oh, maybe 40, 39 or 40 until it's really blurry. And it's blurring out all the text and video in the background. Now if I hit play.
Rock the vote at Belmont University, where Nashville colleges are uniting to celebrate democracy. With performers from Tennessee State University, spoken word artist.
Okay, so it's working for Summer Jade and it's working for our text, but obviously we don't need all of this blur over the rest of the video, do we? No. So at this point, all we had to do was throw the blur on this adjustment layer once, instead of having to come in and individually edit every one of these little clips and blur them out and add cross dissolves and fade things in and out. By applying it once to this, I can now come in and simply get rid of any parts right here. So look, here's how I do it. I don't even need to see. I just know that I only need this blur layer up when there's not an artist on screen. So I'll switch to my cut tool, cut right here after the next one. Oops. Cut here when they come in, and delete. Switch to my cut tool, cut, switch back to selection, and delete. You see how that's working? This is a very simple and quick way to put blur under every artist introduction while removing it from everything else.
Summer University, spoken word artist Summer Jade. From Middle Tennessee State University, Shelter Cove. From Fisk University, R&B singer-songwriter
Right on.
Lauren McClinton. From Vanderbilt,
How's that working? Use those shift plus and minuses if you need to. Helps get your tracks more visible on the screen. Good. Good.
How do you undo the numbers or the in and out place?
You can either right click on it, right click it on the inlet space, clear them out, or Option X. Yeah, X marks stuff, Option X unmarks. Or sets the in and out points, rather. All right, look back to my screen just for 1 second, and let's make sure before we close out of here and leave that we know which project we have open. Now look at the top of your screen, and you can be very sure. Right now, I can see at the top of my Premiere window, it says, on my volume, 1 terabyte hard drive, 1450 project 2, in my project folder, /O2 project files, / here's the name of the project. So when I save and I quit Premiere, I should be able to look and see, there's my project. When was it last saved? Today at 12:14. Then, just for safekeeping, since I just did a bunch of work on that, I would email myself a copy of that file. Because even if my hard drive died, I could always download that little clip or download that project file and reconnect it with my media and not lose any work. All right, so once you've verified that you've got that, and Premiere is quit, you can just eject your hard drive and you're good to go.